Welcome to the We Hack Purple podcast, where each week we interview someone from the information security industry and we talk to them about all the awesome things they know. This week is sponsored by Neuralegion. They create a DAS that will knock your socks off. And our host, actually, I'm our host, I'm Tanya Janka, but our guest is Adam Shostack. And we are going to talk today all about threat modeling. And if you read my blog, you know I think it's kind of awesome to do some evil brainstorming. But what I want to do is have Adam explain. But first, Adam, can you just introduce yourself and tell people a bit about you?
Sure. Hi, I'm Adam Shostack. I wrote a book on threat modeling designing for security. Let me see if I can point in the approximate right direction. You know, this awesome thing you have with Zoom mirrors.
And you made this.
I did. I created the Elevation of Privilege Threat Modeling card deck, which is a way to introduce threat modeling to developers. I helped to create the CVE. I'm on the review board for Black Hat, and I'm an affiliate professor at the University of Washington. So that's a quick intro to me. But really, these days, I'm known for the work that I do in threat modeling.
Yes, he really is. Whenever I have a question, I'm like, I'm going to probably call Adam. And when we went through the threat modeling chapter in my book, guess who I invited on my show? Yeah, that's right. I invited Adam. He said, yes. So then I was like, what if I invited him again? And he said yes again. So he's pretty generous. You add that to the list of things about Adam. And so I was hoping, Adam, that you could tell our audience, what is threat modeling? What's the big deal?
So threat modeling is a way to think systematically about the security of what you're working on. It gives us a way to look broadly at a project and make sure we're structured in how we're dealing with it. And it gives the business a language to speak from executives to technology people to security, where everyone is literally asking the same questions as a way to frame what we're doing. And the four questions that are at the heart of threat modeling, that are in the threat modeling manifesto, are: what are we working on? What can go wrong? What are we going to do about it? And did we do a good job? And we'll get you a link for the threat modeling manifesto as part of this, by the way.
Oh yeah, definitely. I want to put a whole bunch of links. I'm a huge fan, and so basically, you know, Adam won't say this, but he sort of invented threat modeling. He did, yeah. And so a lot of people will all quote him, like a lot of things come back because he started this idea and then developed it over like an entire career, which is really awesome. And so when I read a blog like Hella Secure, they're like, yeah, we got these questions from Adam. Or like you see one of my videos and it's like, but also if there's other resources you want to see, there might be this book, or you might want to go look at the, and it's like, quite often it leads back to Adam in a good way, because he wants to share information with everyone, which is why he said yes to being on the show. So you wrote a white paper recently that when I looked at it, I was like, yes, I agree. And I think part of it is because like when you first dive into threat modeling, people can be really formal and obsessive about getting it perfect. And I have to say I might have fallen into that category. But your white paper, fast, cheap, good. Do you want to tell us a bit about it?
Sure. So the fundamental idea is that there's this unusual trade-off, which is that threat modeling that is fast and cheap is also good. And if you've been around engineers, you know it's fast, cheap, good, pick any two. Here we get to pick three. And the reason we get to pick three is a frame. It's that if, and look, I'm guilty of this, and you said very nice things about my book, which I appreciate, and it's 600 pages. So it contributes to the idea, right? I mean, Alice and Bob Learn AppSec is a few hundred pages, right? It's a great short book. And so I've contributed to the idea that threat modeling is heavyweight by literally writing a heavyweight book. And sometimes what that leads to is that people feel it has to be, as you say, perfect. And so what I wanted to do was to point out that when something is that big of a mountain, often people don't take the first step. They don't get started. They don't see the benefits of threat modeling. And so anything that is fast and cheap and easy is better than nothing. And so you can get to good pretty quickly without getting into data flow diagrams and stride and risk management and all of this stuff, which can give you a lot of value, but can also be intimidating.
Yes, yes. When I first started doing public speaking outside of the city I lived in, I was doing a talk called Pushing Left Like a Boss, which you came to see, which I was so terrified because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm talking about threat modeling. I hope Adam likes what I said. And then he was super gracious and awesome and complimentary and wonderful. But a lot of people, the reason why I was nervous, Adam, is because so many people would come up to me after and tell me, that's not enough for threat modeling. You can't just have a 1 hour meeting with the tech lead and the business lead and then just ask them what could go wrong, what keeps you up at night. That's not enough. You have to do attack trees. You have to do stride or pasta. You have to, and I was like, well, I can have stride in my head, but I'm not saying what could be tampered with or could this be spoofed. I'm like, oh, so what if I could pretend I was someone else, like by doing this, like would that be a problem? And I try to word it in ways they know and like ask questions and it's informal. We're evil brainstorming. And I just had person after person tell me, that's not enough. You're not doing it perfectly, so it's no good. And I was like, well, you know what? Thanks for your opinion. But most places I work, they've never done any threat modeling before. There's no way I could get away with, I'm going to spend a few weeks and get back to you. It's like, no, I get to have 30 minutes with them and that's it. And then I'm gone. So I'm going to do the best I can. And so in your paper, what do you give some suggestions or hints about how maybe you could start doing some good threat modeling rather than perfect threat modeling?
I do. The paper actually collects a set of these, going from just asking the question, what could go wrong, to security fictions and fortunately, unfortunately, and what keeps you up at night and lock people in a room. And we can think about these in terms of a couple of axes. How much knowledge do you need as you start doing it? Is there prep? Is there training? You pulled out the elevation of privilege card deck, and the folks who produce mine, you've got a Microsoft version there. And I'm working with a company in England now called Agile Stationery. And they make my decks with my logo on it and whatnot. And they said, we've got some people who are having trouble. Could we do a live session with you? We sell these live sessions once a month, and they generally sell out because people are a little apprehensive. How do I bring a game into my work? How do I run this? What do I do with objections? And so it turns out, well, I think of it as a very lightweight method. There's a little bit of training. There's another approach, which I borrowed from a friend who uses improv comedy as the basis of her collaboration training. And it's called Fortunately, Unfortunately. And fortunately, it's pretty easy to teach. And now you say, but unfortunately.
You have to know the game to teach it?
And fortunately, I can teach it to you in 30 seconds.
And I don't know what to add for unfortunately.
It's an
like
improv comedy thing. Go wherever you'd like.
But unfortunately, We Hack Purple doesn't make any apps for us to threat model.
Fortunately,
We can threat model more than apps.
we can threat model more than apps.
Like, actually, like ever since the video on threat modeling that I did for We Hack Purple, our camera guy is always like, I need to threat model this. He's become obsessed with the idea of threat modeling, and all the time he'll send an email, boss. And he doesn't necessarily always use the word threat modeling in the correct situation, but he's always looking for risks and threats now. And like, he's brought up a lot of useful things. And it's awesome.
The camera dying is what can go wrong.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we've got another camera. Unfortunately, it's not as high res as the main one because cameras are expensive.
Yes. Oh, that's cool.
So you can do this really quickly and easily, and the paper is a set of these things and a way to help you think about them. Another one, Security Fictions, is from a fellow Nick Merrill at Berkeley. And he creates these little micro scenarios which give people permission to be an attacker. Pretend someone is coming to you and wants to use your app to identify people who have this characteristic or that. If you were to set your ethics aside and decide to help them, what would that look like? And so he's got a couple of those, and they're cool.
Yeah.
And so from a threat model engineering perspective, maybe your app doesn't have those characteristics about users. Maybe your question would be, if I want to steal money, how would I do that? And Security Fictions is designed to be a one-on-one thing rather than a group thing. Okay, now we have trade-offs we can make between these fast, cheap, and good ones. Is it worth half an hour of your time up front? Or do you just need to go into the room? If you need to just show up in different rooms all the time, maybe a few fictions that you have in your back pocket are great. Maybe the card deck is great. But the whole point of the white paper is to share these ideas and to address, and I remember, I think it was in B-Sides Vancouver that we first met. People did ask that question. And so part of the reason that I wrote the white paper is because now you can bop them on the head very gently and say, no, Adam Shostack said it's okay, it can be good, even if it's not everything in his book.
Yes. I feel like Adam said it's okay is a pretty good way to get out of some arguments with people, because they're like, well, damn. He's kind of the guy.
I mean, I hate arguing from authority, but if I'm going to argue from authority, right? And actually, let me really say this to your audience. I learn, I did not create threat modeling, right? Stride comes from Prerit Garg and Lauren Konfelder, who's got an awesome new book. Attack trees, lots of pieces were created by other people. The thing that I have done, which I believe has the most value, is to organize it, simplify it, provide some structure, provide some accessibility. And I am always learning from the folks around me. The importance, and I think, in fact, this white paper came from a DevSecCon, and you and I were standing next to each other in the back of a room in Seattle, and I was really annoyed at the panel there. And they were like, threat modeling is always heavyweight, blah, 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 blah. We just do X. And I stewed on that for a really long time.
Oh, wow.
Because one, I wanted to convince myself that it wasn't really threat modeling. And two, I was really annoyed that they kept using the word just. And so this paper comes from these learnings that come from people being willing to talk to me about what they're doing, to ask me these questions. And you know, I'm willing to say, you can use that, but please don't take this to mean that you, as the listener to this podcast, cannot advance how we threat model, that you can't look at the situation you're in on your own, come up with a solution, and ideally you do this with some experience, with some knowledge about what you're doing, why you're doing it, how it compares to other possible fixes. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, but you often need to invent new modes of transportation to deal with the things that you're working on, to help you think about, what can go wrong.
Yeah. A question that I receive a lot, and that I put in the final chapter of my book, is how do I know when I've done enough? And maybe that's the thing, is that they're like, well, I'm trying to do threat modeling, and if I do this simple thing, maybe it's not enough. Maybe I'm a failure then. Maybe I'm not doing right by my organization. And I hope that this white paper lets people feel a bit more confident. What you're doing is good. It's way better than nothing.
So I told you there were two things in the paper that I wanted to cover. There's actually three.
Oh, okay. Tell me the third one, then we'll do the second one.
The third one is a graph, and maybe we can flash the graph up on screen and edit.
Yeah, let's do it.
And it shows on one axis how much knowledge about the product do I need, and on the other, how much security knowledge do I need. And what you're expressing is the idea that most security problems require esoteric security knowledge to find. And I don't think that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
I think many security problems, remote file includes, for example, actually just require you to know that this is a problem, that if you're passing user input to a command like open, that's going to open a file, that open will often respect something like HTTP or file : / and ... And so it's vulnerable to a bunch of fairly easy user inputs that manipulate what the call is going to do.
Is this the graph?
No, go up.
Go up?
Go way up. It's like on page 2.
Okay.
Maybe page 3.
This one?
Here we go. Look at that, agile editing. So you see, remote file inclusion doesn't require very much security expertise.
It doesn't.
But it does require an understanding of the system. And so if this graph really represents the amount of security expertise required, then to go back to what you said about people feeling like the simple things don't help them, well, if most things are over on the left-hand side of the graph where not a lot of security expertise is required, then two things happen. The first thing that happens is these lightweight approaches have real value because they can be done by the people with the system knowledge. The second thing that happens is we as security experts get to spend our time only on the things that are hard and relatively rare because, and look, you and I both spend a lot of time talking about SQL injection and remote file includes and all that for a reason, which is they're common and it's important to teach people about them. And we have some more esoteric knowledge about birthday problems and unusual forms of spoofing where we mess with a certificate authority chain or what have you. And so, again, to go back to what you said, the people who feel that they're not doing enough, I want to reassure them that fast and cheap can really be good, right? You get more from doing than not doing. I want to make a Yoda quote.
No, you should. And for anyone listening, if you go to wehackpurple.com and then you go to the podcast, there's going to be an episode page for this. And you can get all of the links if you're just listening. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you go down to the description, guess what's going to be there? Links. Yeah. So just in case anyone's wondering, I expect you all to read this white paper before the net. Just kidding. You don't have to. But I would like it if you did, just to be clear. Because even just look at the pictures. If that's all you want to do, just look at the pictures. It doesn't have to be perfect. Can I ask you about the third part of the white paper, or the second part, the undocumented work?
Yeah.
Can you explain the concept and then how expensive it is?
Sure. So the basic idea is, let's say you're in a security center of excellence where you go and you consult with your fellow employees at the company, or even you're a consultant, you come in and you're trying to figure out what this thing they want you to threat model is. You say, what are you working on? And the answers to all of this are ambient, they're undocumented, they're things that everyone knows, and there's lots of places where things will slip between the cracks, we'll misunderstand one another, we'll have different mental models. All of these things that require that I say, Tanya, tell me about your video recording setup, take time. And that time doesn't feel productive to you. You're like, I know what my video production setup is. Can we just talk about the fact that the camera will overheat? Maybe we could, but then maybe we're missing out on the fact, whatever fact we're missing out on, who cares?
OS update. It's always an OS update.
It's always an OS update, yes. And so we have this work of tell me about, or worse, bring me a diagram. And I spoke a year or so ago at Black Hat about the risks of bring me a diagram and how it stands for be mad, because that's what happens when you say the words bring me a diagram, is you're creating a problem. You don't know it's a problem, but it always leads to problems. You have to go in and draw the diagram with the folks that you're working with, because otherwise you're throwing this big unscoped request. And what they hear is, bring me precise blueprints. I'll come back later when I have the blueprints completed, not I want to sketch on a napkin.
Yes, Adam, yes. So many times I'll meet with a team and they're like, oh, here's our diagram. And I'm like, oh, do you not have a database? They're like, oh, we didn't put that on there. I'm like, oh, how do you authenticate? Oh, we do that with this. I'm like, oh, what about and then they brought me a half diagram, right? And also they made me wait until they're totally done the design and they're about to go live. And I was like, can't you just sketch me something? Can we just meet and I could just quiz you? I'll bring cookies.
And that ambient work, that knowledge transfer work, doesn't feel productive.
For them, or for you as the security person? Or
for anyone. And I'm doing some work with a customer right now, and we're doing all of this threat modeling. And it turns out that between the teams that are involved, really what's happening is I'm forcing them to draw a picture together, and just drawing the picture together is exposing so many misunderstandings and disagreements. And that can be very valuable, even though it doesn't look like the sort of structured work people want. Again, fast and cheap is good. Mm-hmm. But also, when we think about what are we going to deploy across our company, mm-hmm. if we have a system where you have to wait for Adam to show up, you're missing out on all of that stuff on the left-hand side of the diagram, where you could have figured out that there was a problem. You could have solved that problem or started to solve that problem on your own without doing any of that knowledge transfer work. And so if we think about the effort for improvement, right, and we start thinking about ratios of effort to improvement, these fast, cheap methods give us much better ratios of work to result than things that require me to, I did some work over the summer where it was a couple of weeks for me to get the brain dumps on the system. We found some interesting stuff. Not sure it was worth all of that time for them, because that the work of teach Adam what's going on here was never part of the project plan in their minds. It was definitely part of the work in my mind.
Yeah.
And so I want to make, and that's the third piece of the paper, is let's be explicit about the knowledge transfer activity as a thing which we need, and we learn this from the agile world, right? Can we be more efficient at this? Do we need to do that? Why do we need to do it this way? Boy, all of that communication, coordination, overhead feels like overhead. And so if you believe the distribution of issues, then you can make an intellectual case to be fast and cheap about what it is we're doing. And so the third part of the white paper is here are some fast, cheap methods. And then the first two parts of the white paper are here's the intellectual scaffolding that allows me to present these as goodness.
I like the way you worded that a lot. I feel like a lot of places that I've worked, I will see a big project, and whether it's waterfall or DevOps or whatever they're doing, or they're doing waterfall but they're using a pipeline, whatever the thing they're doing, but they haven't actually put time in the project for the security work. And so I come along and I'm like, hey, so I scanned your stuff. And of course, if it's never been scanned before, guess what I found? Problems. Yeah, and I'm like, can we have a chat about like, and I'm very negotiating sort of style. I'm not like, I found this and you'll do this or else. I'm like, hey, we found these things. Can we talk about them? And sometimes they're false positives, or it's a true positive, but it's mitigated elsewhere. Like, oh, my API doesn't have this authentication, but we're using an API gateway and it does all of that there, and we hardened it and it's good, so we can just like scratch that off and it's cool. But without that conversation, you can't. But then I've dumped this work on them and they still have to release Friday. And it's like, why wasn't this added to the project scope? And so I worked somewhere and they did 2 secure code reviews and 2 pen tests during this giant 4-year waterfall. Wow. Right? Yeah, they were very intense and it was really cool. They put 0 time in for that. And so here I am as like the security consultant, like trying to help. And at one point I go and I look at Jira. Every single security bug's marked as fixed since yesterday. And there's like a zillion lines of code. I'm like, really? So I go and I look and they're all marked fixed by the same dude. So I go to his desk, I'm like, so you fixed 181 security bugs yesterday? And he's like, and he was the project lead and they were gonna be late and the devs were stressing about the open bug. So he just marked them all as fixed because he's like, we're not fixing any of that crap, Tanya. We have work to do. We're not gonna make our deadline. You didn't give me any, like, this is the 4th security thing you're doing to me. I'm like, oh no. And so here, like, is there a way that maybe people could, like, if they're gonna do threat modeling, put time into the schedule for it so the devs don't feel like squished? It's like expected time.
So we could do an entire podcast on that story, and maybe we should.
Yeah.
The thing that I think is most important is that tension of I fixed 108. I marked 180 security bugs as fixed yesterday can be avoided with some very fast, cheap, and good methods that you apply at the start of the project or as you go. You can be in the middle, you can be close to the end. These methods will help you find things, they will help you surface things. And look, the first time you go to the gym, right? It's January. A lot of people are resolving to lose weight or go to the gym more often. The first time you go to the gym, you're really sore. It stinks. And most people will go to the gym once and then they'll be sore and then they'll give up.
That's literally what I used to do, Adam. That's exactly what I used to do. And then I learned the first time I go to the gym in a while, be super stupid gentle. And then the next day I'm like, I feel fine. I guess I can go to the gym and not die.
So what you want is a fast workout. Fortunately, we have those available.
Yeah, with threat modeling. Fast, easy, fast, cheap, and good.
Exactly. And so what we need, get started. If you get started, if you do something now, it will see having an uncomfortable meeting today will save you a much more uncomfortable meeting when you're at the release deadline. Mm-hmm. And that's what we would like. Nobody wants to be in that really uncomfortable thing when the release is pending. And, both of us at different points in our careers were at Microsoft and went through program manager training. One of the things is eat a frog every morning.
Oh, really? I didn't do the program manager training. Instead,
You
I got
did
speaker
okay.
training.
So the idea is eat a frog in the morning and nothing else will be that unpleasant through your day. You get one unpleasant thing out of the way each day and everything flows more smoothly.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And so maybe this is your frog. Maybe, and here I'm speaking directly to you, the listener. But if you haven't done threat modeling, now you have a free white paper. I'm not even asking you to fill out a funny name in the reg form because I don't need to go through people telling me that they're named Tanya. Tanya has the white paper. I don't need to meet these people. And we'll just insert some Bart Simpson calling Mo on the phone sort of jokes here. And those are the less rude. Anyway, not even a registration wall. It's free. Download it, read it, apply it.
Yes, please do. Okay, Adam, as we wrap up, what other things would you like to promote? So maybe your website, anything else?
Sure. And so I do want to say that we do operate a couple of mailing lists, which you are invited. Please sign up for them. Adam's new thing is all about the interesting stuff that I'm doing. There's a new courses list. I spend a lot of my time doing training work. And so if you'd like to sign, and in fact, we've got an open course. It's coming up the end of February. It's a 2-day equivalent. We stretch it over a week because Zoom fatigue, but it's a 2-day equivalent intensive threat modeling course that people love. So that's coming up the end of February. And we have a new course announcements list where you'll hear about all our new upcoming courses. So check out the white paper, sign up for our mailing lists, and go threat model.
I want to know if you want to sign up for his course, you should sign up early. I have seen them sell out quite a bit. So if you want to get a spot, do it early or you might get disappointed. Yes, thank you so much for being on the show, Adam. Thank you for sharing so much.
You're welcome. This was so much fun.
I agree. We're going to have all of Adam's links in the show notes. So again, if you're just listening, you can go to wehackpurple.com, click on podcast, and then look for Adam. Or if you are watching this, you're on YouTube, just go down the screen and there'll be a description and it'll be really short. You click more, show me more, and there'll be all of these links and then some probably, because we'll probably invite you to the We Hack Purple community. Cool.
And since you're on YouTube, click subscribe.
Yes, click subscribe and then go to Adam's YouTube page and subscribe there. And then go to my personal YouTube page, She Hacks Purple, and subscribe there. Just subscribe, like all the info sec. Just subscribe. Okay, and with that, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the We Hack Purple podcast, where each week we meet basically an amazing genius who tells us all about what they know in information security, and they teach us something new. Thank you so much to Adam Shostack for being our amazing guest this week. And thank you so much for Neuralegion sponsoring this podcast. They are going to be our sponsor going forward, basically forever. So you're going to hear their name a lot. Please go check them out. Thank you very much.